Look at verse 44 in Luke. Then he said to them, "These are the words which I spoke to you while I was still with you, that all things must be fulfilled which were written in the law of Moses and the prophets and the Psalms concerning me." And he opened their understanding that they might comprehend the scriptures. Then he said to them, "Thus it is written, and thus it was necessary for the Christ to suffer and arise from the dead the third day, and that repentance and remission of sins should be preached in his name to all nations, beginning at Jerusalem. And you are witnesses of these things." So, did you catch verse 45 right there? Look at verse 45 one more time. He opened their understanding that they might comprehend the scriptures. What a blessing. What a miracle. Jesus is able to open the eyes of our hearts so we not only see him in the scriptures, but we understand and we believe in God's redemptive plan. And we receive it as personal. We receive it as something done for us. Can you imagine what the walk back to Jerusalem was like? So the road to Emmaus is a sad walk, and they're discouraged, and they're distraught, and the promises and the hope and the anticipation, it's all crumbling down because Jesus is dead, and we don't know what to make of it, and the disciples are huddled up, and they're scared, and it's been 3 days, and we're confused, and we're frustrated, but the walk back, what was that conversation like? What rejoicing and joy had to be in their hearts. Now that the gospel wasn't just something in their heads, but it was something that saved their souls. Notice that verse 47 says that repentance and remission of sins should be preached in his name to all nations. I want to tie this in with Sunday school as I close here. The reason we go out and the reason we evangelize with confidence is because God shows up just like this to open the hearts of the hearer. That's the reason we go out and proclaim the gospel truth. Great segue into the missions conference. Why are we speaking these words that seem like idle tales? Why are we recounting these scriptures and these prophecies and these promises and these miracles? Why are we doing that? Because God has promised to show up through that work and to save souls. We're doing what we can to proclaim the gospel, and God's doing what we can to open the hearts, to make people understand. It's what he did for us. Now I know it's hard because we heard this morning, proclaiming the gospel brings suffering. So as we do that, we experience suffering and persecution. But the good news is, the suffering for Christ bears fruit, doesn't it? When we suffer for the gospel, it's not in vain. It bears fruit, eternal fruit. Think about how many times in the Bible God's people were persecuted for the truth, and the church grew, and Israel grew through the affliction and through the persecution. So, to quote David Platt, as we believe the gospel with deep-seated conviction, let's proclaim the gospel with death-defying confidence. May God send us people on the road to Emmaus, people that aren't convinced and don't believe. May God send us people like that so we could come up alongside them like Jesus and use the scriptures and speak the gospel and watch a miracle happen. Watch God do something amazing. Let's proclaim the gospel with death-defying confidence. Amen.